It's been a long time since I've done What's on My Workbench. This will be the first one in 2020. It's first day of February of 2020, and what I've got on my workbench today is a Sega Game Gear. Um, Customer asked to have a audio video out installed on it. Game Gear, if you're not familiar with it, is a color portable handheld from the early 1990s made by Sega. It's more or less a portable Sega Master System. Um, it does have a color screen. Um, I mean, it's more or less a portable Sega Master System. It's 8-bit. There's actually you had the option of installing a. There's a converter you can. That's what these slots are for. You can put a converter on the back and actually play Master System games on here, which is kind of cool. We grew up on the Master System after the Atari, so it's a solid portable. I mean, the screen is a little problematic. It's not the brightest screen. The Lynx actually has quite a bit better screen than this. But this one that I want to do is add an audio video out to it. So the first thing you want to do if you're going through it is you're going to want to replace um, the filter caps on it, the electrolytic capacitors. Oh, this one was capped. I might not have to. It says it was capped. Let's take a look inside. It looks like it was capped. Yeah, someone says it's a one ASIC chip with caps. Well, that's interesting. Didn't see that before. So we'll open her up. Its caps are only 4 years old. If even that, that's not bad. 3 years old, so doesn't need to be changed then. Makes my life easier. I can just do the install. And if you ever need to do work on a Game Gear, you need this little anti-tamper bit. There's one anti-tamper screw that's right below the cartridge, right behind the cartridge slot. That's there. So this comes out. Yeah, someone's been in here before. They weren't using the right tool for it. Okay, you can see they scuffed up the head. And other than that, you really just need a number 2 Phillips. It's not too many screws. Let's see how she looks inside. Yeah, it's kind of sad seeing back. One of the reasons I started getting into retro game repair was Mark from Classic Game Room, and he's basically turned his channel into pen reviews, more or less, which I don't see the cross marketing on that one. And they're not even that in depth in terms of pen reviews. I mean, there are pen reviews channels out there. If you like drawing and if you like pens, great. But his reviews are very shallow, and I don't think very useful for the actual artists and enthusiasts who use these pens. But yeah, is a little bit of history. Mark has he's probably sold it by now, a blue Sega Game Gear. Someone can gung it in on that one. A blue Sega Game Gear that I did the AV Out mod on. And he actually featured on a show before he stopped making videos about classic games. And if you that was actually got a shout out from him on that one. He also had my Miss Pac-Man for the Lynx. That was my copy of it. Luckily, I got it back. It's actually a pretty darn rare game at this point. I don't even know how much it cost if I had to replace it. It was actually it's a really solid version of Miss Pac-Man. This camera actually pisses me off a little bit because it loses focus. And it was recapped. Good for me. It saves me a lot of time. You can see it's a really bad cap job, but it's here. It's very messy. And yeah, they're all replaced. I swear. Okay. I mean, they're technically replaced, but they weren't replaced very well. Way too much heat. They used a lot of flux too. Flux helps the solder flow better, but if you really want to, let's see if I can pull this apart. Okay, so Game Gear itself, this is the audio board. It's got an amplifier on there. This is the power board, which is the you can pull off AC power, or it can pull off a 9 volt, and it has a converter to drop it down to 5 volts that the system actually runs off of. I'll show you. Oh, this is kind of a ugly solder job, man. Oof, boy. But I guess it works. Not very neat. I'll just pop one of my own open to show you the difference, but let me blow this window up a little bit. Use my other microscope. As you can see what I'm talking about here. There it is. I mean, it's just really excessive amount of solder. All that yellow stuff is flux. I mean, there's some really like, oh. I'm half tempted to redo the caps again. I'll have to get a hold. I've been having a hard time getting a hold of this patron of mine, Anthony. If you're out there, I'm getting your emails, man. I don't see any indication you're getting them back. I might just fix these things and send them back and hope for the best. Trust me. But yeah, this is some. Oh man, let me look at this. Why? Be lucky if there's still a pad under there. There's so much heat applied. You can see they burnt the connector. This is what happens when you don't have good heat control. You end up melting stuff. It shouldn't look like that. And then I noticed when on the top case they didn't use a low. You're supposed to get a low profile cap for. I'll show you here. This guy coming in here, I'll show you. This metal shield here shouldn't be touching the top of this cap. It's all jammed in, really weird. You should use, they make them, you should get low profile caps there, so when you put this metal shielding back on, you don't have a bent up spot there, because then it's jammed up against the multiplayer port on there. You know, what just fell? I just heard something fall. Okay, make sure there's something in there. Just debris. Okay, so that's it for now. This is the one, the ASIC chip. If you're ever here, this is the ASIC chip over here. Some have 2, some have 1. This is a 837-9024, which is not too unusual. There's a lot of them. This is an actual Sega. Some Majesco, I think, made some as well. So when you put in the the audio video out, it actually sits down in this section here, and you have to tack into a bunch of spots here, and there's a couple spots here you got pickup voltage on. But I'm not going to be doing that tonight. I'm still contemplating if I'm going to recap this thing, because holy crap, Batman, there's some rough ones in there. There's a couple I'm really not happy with the way they look. I mean, I'm surprised this is actually working as well as it is. Oh, this is such a bad cap job. Wow. Anyways, yeah. So next video I'll start actually wiring in the AV out board. I actually have another one that got sent to me with this one, and I think it's got water damage. I might have to go through and swap out some power boards because it's just not turning on. I replaced the caps on it already, and I was hoping that would help solve it. But I think there's basically a switching power supply in here, and I don't think it's holding voltage when it's coming up. I might have to scope it or swap it out with a good one and see what happens. So, well, I guess next you'll see step by step installing. Oh my god, that's horrible. Installing a AV out board if I don't get too pissed off and replace the caps again. Ugh. Sometimes the amateur stuff really gets to me. I mean, I don't do a lot of cap replacements, but if you're going to do it right. Don't have the sloppy stuff. I mean, it looks like it's the first time they've redone caps on it. I'm tempted to pull up this board. Oh my lord. Okay, I'll pull up this board and see how bad it looks on the back side. How much flux did you need? I actually don't even own flux. Or I actually do have flux, but I never use it. I just control the heat on your iron well and you'll be fine. I use leaded solder. Rosin core leaded solder. What am I using nowadays? I'm using 0.6 millimeter. It's actually one of my favorites. This is 6040 tin lead. Lots of lead in that one. Gives you much better solder ability. You get nice fillets off of it. All the solder joints are nice and shiny. You don't have to worry about tin whiskers or anything like that. Oh, wow. People. Not the worst soldering I've seen, but wow. Not the best. It's frustrating. It's just people who train themselves how to solder, you can always tell. It's just nowhere near neat enough, and always way too much heat. Too much flux, too much heat. That's why you always get a soldering iron with temperature control, because you don't use the minimum amount of heat. Because if you use too much heat, what happens is these are surface mount components, and if you have too much heat, you'll basically reflow them and they'll float off the board. Because that's actually how they installed originally. So with surface mount, the pick and place machine puts down all the components with the solder paste that's kind of sticky, and then you put through what's called a reflow oven, and all the solder reflows on the surface, and that's how it gets made. So if you use too much heat, particularly cases up here, as I can see there's quite a bit of heat, what happens is they'll float off the component, and you got to put it back into place. And working on surface mount stuff is kind of a pain in the butt. Not my favorite. That's why Game Gear mods are not my favorite, because you have to deal with tacking onto one side of these resistors down here. So I have to turn my iron way down so I don't go reflowing everything, because I don't want to deal with resistors coming off. If you ever do a McWill screen, you actually have to replace a bunch of resistors and caps, and it's not pleasant. it's not the most fun thing. But I did find a secret weapon for that. I did get, where is it? I did get this. This is a chisel tip iron. Maybe I have another one too, smaller. There it is. This is kind of cool. This is a chisel tip iron here. So you replace your soldering iron head with this chisel tip, and it's just wide enough so when you put you can actually hit both solder pads on a resistor at the same time, and you can just pull it right off. If you ever do work like that, get yourself Mr. Microscope here. It's very handy. Usually when I'm doing a lot of work, I actually have a second smaller monitor sitting over here, a little 10-incher, and I just throw the microscope up here so I can see what the heck I'm doing here. Ooh, hot glue, that's very strange. Okay. So yeah, that's it for tonight. And I'm just saddened. I just really am. I hate seeing bad solder work. It just puts a bad name to the whole industry when you see solder like this. I mean, it doesn't take any longer to do it right. That's the irony. You do it right, you do it wrong. It takes the same amount of time. It actually takes a little longer when you do it wrong because you're fighting damaging components. Make sure they didn't tombstone anything. Tombstoning is when you apply too much heat to a surface mount component and one side will actually pop up and it looks like a little tombstone, so they call it tombstoning. Nice morbid term there, but yeah, that's what they call it. Oh, wow. I wish I could see the manufacturer of these caps too. They're hard to see. I'll have to look it up. Make sure they're not little cheapos. I'm slightly worried about that. Oh well. That's enough for tonight.